Some popular time management advice that I see everywhere right now is to get everything done by 10 a.m. But as a mom managing the home, I found this to be not only unrealistic, but honestly damaging. The hustle mentality never fails to show up in my attitude and in our home. But through the years and a lot of mistakes, I've learned that the Bible speaks to time management in a far better and more freeing way. So stay with me because what I share today can change how you see your time and give you practical ways to apply this in your own home. Before we get into the practical, we need to talk about the root issue with modern time management advice that can subliminally chip away at our peace as we try to take care of our homes. Ever since the Industrial Revolution, our culture has leaned towards treating people like machines. The mindset, especially in American culture, is to produce, produce, produce. Efficiency, get as much done as possible. And we are busier than ever, not just with real tasks, but in a kind of pseudo sense because all of the extra noise through the devices and the platforms and the messaging that expect you to be available all the time. Absolutely not helpful for a mom to have all of those demands on us that the Lord does not place on us. And what that creates in the mind and heart of a mom is a pull towards one of two extremes. What people tend to do is either to shut down because you're so overwhelmed you don't even know where to start, or you go to the other end of the spectrum and you try to tackle everything on the list at the expense of being a warm, kind, calm, and present mom. And I have been in both of those places. I have been overwhelmed to the point of checking out and scrolling or simply avoiding the whole thing, and the task that I actually need to do just sit there. And I've been on the other end, frantic and snapping at my kids because everything on the list was just living in my head and I was just stressed out. Neither one is how God intended for it to be. That is not the life that He called us to. So ask the question, is life not more than tasks? Didn't Jesus tell us that life is more than food and clothing and not to be anxious about those things? Yes, we still need to be good stewards of our time and learn to manage our homes. That is a real call from Titus 2. But before the manager of the home in that passage, Paul speaks to loving your husband and your children. And I have had to learn that optimizing the home at the expense of my relationships and doing things like tying heartstrings, being present, doing the slower and harder work of actually being with the people right in front of me, that was never the trade. When we get into that mindset of trying to get it all done by a certain hour, it causes us to look at our home like it's a production line with tasks to crank through. And we miss the people. We miss the home that we get to cultivate and enjoy. The Bible does not call us to productivity in that sense. All throughout Proverbs, it calls us to faithfulness and diligence and to live our lives with wisdom and prudence. And the Bible speaks directly against being hasty. Proverbs 19:2 says, "Whoever makes haste with his feet misses his way." And then Proverbs 21:5 says that the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty only comes to poverty. There's wisdom in plodding away steadily in all areas of life, including the home. That is a different way of seeing your day entirely. And the application of this way of thinking is incredibly freeing. By the way, if you're feeling that tension right now, like you know you have a lot that needs to get done, but you're overwhelmed by all of it, or you're not really sure what to prioritize in the day, I have a toolkit that is specifically built to help you stabilize your home and get the important things done and build rhythms that actually work for your season. You can grab that down below. But anyway, so what does Scripture actually give us? One of my absolute favorite passages when I think about home management is Proverbs 6:6. And part of it is, "Go to the ant, consider her ways, and be wise." The ant operates in rhythms. She follows the same trail back and forth and steadily plods away throughout the day, little by little, building her home. She's not rushing to get it all done in the first part of the day and then propping up her feet for the rest of it or coasting. She is faithfully tending to her work throughout the day. And I have watched my own home come together in the exact same way. That image reframed everything for me because I had spent years believing that a well-run home required a massive overhaul of how things were at the time. I thought I needed a whole house clean out or a big reorganization project or some perfect burst of motivation that would finally fix everything that I thought was wrong in the home. And because I never had the time or the energy for those big efforts, I would not take care of the things that needed to be taken care of. And so slowly things just piled up, dust bunnies and all. But this is not what it means to be a keeper of the home in the Titus 2 sense. The whole counsel of Scripture would speak to being diligent, wise, and faithful in our work, not just in cleaning house and being narrowly focused on that, but in building a home, relationships and all, loving our husbands and our children, having self-control, showing up day after day, following the same simple trail, and joyfully walking in the good works that God puts in front of you. Making the meals, reading the books, smiling at your children, embracing your husband, and yes, stewarding and taking care of the home that God gave you. That is what faithfulness actually looks like in homemaking. And you guys, I can speak to this because I have lived it. My temptation for the longest time was to look at the mess or look at what wasn't working and feel like I just had to blow it all up and start over. I very much had an all or nothing mindset. But when I started to understand the concept of rhythms, just showing up a little bit at a time consistently, it was genuinely a relief. Like, that's all I have to do as a mom with a lot of little ones. That was just such a weight off my shoulders. Just follow the simple plan again and again. And practically what that looks like in our home is having rhythms. Again, not a strict schedule. I don't love strict schedules because with little children, life is simply not going to go according to the clock. I like rhythms, things in a day where I know after this happens, then this happens, then this. I have what I call anchor points that they are related to meal times and sleep, and those are where it helps to be mindful of the time. But the rhythms are what happen around those anchors. And there is great flexibility there that just simply leaves room for life to happen. So, for example, when not newborn season, the rhythm for us in the morning is when my kiddos wake up, they do their morning routine. They get dressed, they make their bed, pick up the room. I help the little ones with this, and then we come together in the living room for quiet time. They are reading their Bibles or looking at books if they're little, and I'm reading my Bible or a book if I've already gotten my time in with the Lord earlier. The toddler sits on his blanket with milk and a few books, and then after that, we move into breakfast, chores, and school. The things that need to happen are just happening, anchored around waking up and around breakfast. Everyone knows what's coming. It flows without me having to really think about it or tell everybody what to do every single morning. That's what it looks like to see your time differently. It's not a list to finish, it is a rhythm to tend. And this can apply to everything in the home, from laundry to meals, you name it. And God gives us rhythms every single day, like when we wake, when we go to sleep, when we eat throughout the day. So we can simply lean into what He's already built in. So again, my daily rhythms are anchored to meal times and nap times. These rhythms are what helps me get food on the table, clothes on people's backs, the home tidied or cleaned, and people loved and schooled. And then I have weekly rhythms for the things that have to happen regularly, but maybe not daily, like errands or some extra baking or bills as some examples. If we get sick and it doesn't happen one week, this is freeing because I know that these rhythms are just going to cycle back around. I don't have to stress out about missing something one week. This mindset has helped me to stop striving to get everything done on a list. Instead of trying to get it all done, I started asking what the right things were for my season, my home, and my family. So that shift changed how I moved throughout the day and took a ton of pressure off. By the way, if we haven't met yet, I'm Lauren. I'm a homeschooling mom of 6, and this channel is all about building fruitful, life-giving homes through simple, God-honoring rhythms. If that sounds like something you need, don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss my weekly videos. So anyway, that shift in my mindset, realizing that I did not have to have a perfectly curated schedule that fits somebody else's home or massively overhaul my home to become perfectly pristine like it was out of a magazine. There's just so much freedom in that. But there was one thing that I missed for the longest time, even when rhythms were in place. And I have to give my husband credit here because he has been really key in helping me see it. And once I did, it was a blessing to my soul and our home. And honestly, this is an important piece of what Scripture says about God honoring work. And that is the concept of margin. Without it, there can be great temptation towards being hasty, and this makes it very difficult to be joyful and faithful in your work. This one I have had to learn the hard way. So if I don't have margin in my day, I am stressed. And stress for me is the enemy of patience. Bottom line, all the time. If I'm running late because I didn't leave room, but instead I filled every single gap with more tasks rather than allowing room to breathe in the day, I have historically not been a patient or a kind mom in those moments in my flesh. I remember one specific day, this was when my girls were pretty young. We had just adopted them and we had put them in ballet. And I was not good at getting kids out the door back then. I was always waiting until the very last minute. So we were already running late, getting out to the van, and it was taking so much longer than I expected. And I was snappy. I was frustrated with them for taking too long, shutting down their questions, not being kind. And all of it was because I had not left margin. I had waited until the very last minute, and that was on me. If I had just given enough time to mosey out to the van, let them ask their questions, and not felt that pressure, I would have been a completely different mom in that moment. But when you're pressed for time and the pressure is on, it makes it so much easier to give into sin. And then we have to get right with the Lord, and we have to get right with our children. Over the years, I've had to apologize more times than I can count because of that fleshly tendency. So at this point, I try really hard to leave margin because I have found that this is the thing that most directly affects whether I can be the mom God has called me to be in any given moment. And here's the thing, knowing my season of life and being self-aware has been huge for this. My little ones do not move quickly. They are never going to go quickly. They are not on my timetable, and honestly, that used to drive me crazy until I started seeing it differently. They enjoy life. They twiddle their thumbs. They smell the roses, and that's exactly how God made them. I love their childlike wonder. And when things feel hard or chaotic and my children are just being children, I've had to learn that these years are refining me too. They are an invitation to grow in patience and to be realistic about time and honestly to learn from them and remember to enjoy life. Stop and smell the roses with them. So basically, a big part of managing your time as a mom is to include margin. For me, practically, that looks like building extra time into transitions, not waiting until the last minute before we need to leave or move into the next part of the day, like in school. Simply leave room for life to happen and roll with the punches when it does, because it will. So aiming to get everything done by 10 a.m., trying to pump out the task, just grinding through the day, that is not the goal for the Christian. Our goal is to be fruitful, to be faithful, and to steward well what God has given us. And again, one way I've found to do that is through rhythms. Not perfectly executing them, not even close by any stretch of the imagination, but intentionally and thoughtfully creating them and then showing up consistently where I can. And things just usually kind of fall into place. Finding ways to chip away at things consistently and faithfully is a great blessing to the home. To number our days wisely, to trust the Lord with our time rather than grasping and insisting that things go the way that we want. When I lean into the rhythms and leave margin, or when I tend to the home little by little instead of in frantic bursts, that's when I am most able to be the mom and the homemaker that God has called me to be. The world's version of time management is built on the assumption that you are in control, that if you just optimize hard enough, you can master your time. But Scripture starts from a completely different place. Time belongs to God. We are stewards of it, not masters of it. And the moment that you start approaching your day like a steward instead of like a machine, something shifts. Not because the list got shorter, but because you stop being at war with the day. That is the truth the Bible figured out first, and it is the one that the productivity world is still missing. If you're ready to start building simple rhythms into your home, the Faithful in the Little Things toolkit is linked down below. It's a wonderful place to start. You can find out more at the link below. Thank you so much for being here today. I'll see you in the next one.